Chair. I'm the Counsellor for Education and Research at our embassy, the Australian Embassy in Brasilia. We're really pleased to be hosting this event to introduce you to different opportunities to collaborate with Australia on research relating to agriculture. As I just mentioned and it started, the webinar will be recorded. So in our session today, we're going to start with some brief remarks by our Ambassador to Chile, Andrew Martin, followed by a presentation from our Agricultural Counsellor, Nectaria Serbas, followed by keynote presentations and a panel discussion. So without taking up too much time, I'd like to hand over to our Ambassador to Chile and Ecuador, Andrew Martin. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thanks very much for that, Kasira, and hello to everybody. I understand we've got quite a few people online, which is fantastic. And the great thing about this is a collaboration between a lot of our embassies in across South America, which is fantastic. Well, South Latin America, not just South America. So it's great to welcome everybody this afternoon to this webinar on fostering research collaboration between Australia and the region on agriculture, fisheries, and forestry. As I said, it's a joint initiative hosted by the Australian Education and Research Counsellors in Brazil and Mexico. We have Cassia Hare, who you met, and Barbara Klompenhauer, and our agriculture counsellors, Tanya Oliver and Nectarius Sirvas from Mexico, and Nectarius here in Chile with me. It's great that that group and more broadly have taken this initiative to get this webinar going and reaching out to government, industry, and university institutions across the Americas. I understand we had over 200 registrations today. I'm not sure if we have that many online, but certainly there's been a lot of interest in this, and it's also being recorded for others, so that'll be good as well. I also want to thank and acknowledge some of the key sort of keynote speakers that we have today. So we have Harriet Mellish, who you'll hear from Agri Futures, and Mick Schaefer from the Food Agility Cooperative Research Centre, as well as Alec Webb from Regional Universities Australia. So thanks to all of them for being part of this today. Just by way of background, and I'm sure many of you know this, but for Australia, agriculture, fisheries and forestry is an incredibly important industry. In 24-25, the projected value, I'm just looking at the figure, is $86 billion of production and exports of $68 billion in Australia. And you can sort of do the quick maths on that. So about 72% of Australia's agricultural production is exported. Australian agriculture accounts for about 55% of land use in Australia. That's 426 million hectares, and 74% of water consumption in Australia. Despite the challenges of the harsh landscape that we have in Australia, with ancient soils, scarce water, and then, of course, with the effects of climate change, agriculture in Australia has continued to grow. And this growth has really been underpinned by the productivity improvements that has supported our agriculture, fisheries and forestry industries, and that productivity improvement is supported by the research that's been undertaken in Australia and around the world, and that's really what we want to talk to you about today. Also worth noting that today's webinar coincides, and I didn't know this myself until today, with National Agriculture Day in Australia. I should have known that because I grew up on a farm. But anyway, I'm glad that I've learned about that today. So National Agriculture Day in Australia. And it's great to be able to share with all of you in a small way this day that's dedicated to celebrating and learning about Australian agriculture. So the aims of the webinar today are to highlight the diversity and the breadth of agriculture, fisheries and forestry research and development in Australia, to provide insights into the different institutions supporting technological innovation and learning in Australia, and also to outline pathways for institutions and individuals in South and Central America to collaborate, partner and innovate with Australia. So my agriculture counsellor Nectarius, who's here with me in Chile, will present shortly he always tells me when we're talking about agriculture, across the region, that one of the first things that both private sector and public bodies, governments want to discuss with him is how we can do more collaboration and research and development with Australia. And that's something that, not just me here in Chile, but I know all of the ambassadors in the region, the Australian ambassadors in the region, are also very supportive of trying to do more of that. So that's why this webinar today is such a good thing. And why we have and it's great to see that we have so many participants in today's webinar. So the presentations today will demonstrate that the research and development landscape in Australia is diverse. There's a lot to it, and that's why we have 3 speakers today from 3 different bodies, just to give us sort of a better understanding of the different types of research and development that we have going on in Australia. And I hope that also this event today will help to highlight the different ways to navigate and identify potential partners for whom or with whom you can look to do further collaboration in Australia. And also looking to outline today some options for research institutions and innovators here in the region to draw directly to draw attention to the research and innovations that are being undertaken here in the region, and that you could maybe work amongst yourselves and also with some of the Australian participants too. So again, I'd like to thank all of the speakers who are going to speak today, and for everybody for joining us. And I hope it all goes well, and happy National Agriculture Day. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for those words and for welcoming everyone. I'm now going to hand over to our Agricultural Councillor, Nectaria Serbas, who will take us through the research landscape in Australia for agriculture.
And we're very tech savvy here, so we're going to swap seats.
So apologies, everyone. Thank you, Nectaria Serbas, Australia's Agricultural Councillor. I cover most of South America, so welcome everyone who's online at the moment. We've also got a agriculture councillor located in Central America. I think my colleague's just putting up some of my slides. It's great to have so many organisations here. I won't recap too much. I want to keep this presentation short, and I've already probably gone too long. What I wanted to sort of talk through in my presentation is just some of the context of Australian agricultural research and innovation and the policy behind it. Some of the key participants in our system, and we'll hear more about that and from them directly in the presentations, and to leave you with a picture of who funds and who spends and who actually does some of the research in Australia, because there's one of the other things that I come across when I go through the region is there's lots of references to research and development corporations. There's lots of references also to the CSIRO, but there's not always as much reference to all of the other players in the landscape that do the research. Next slide. So this effectively sets out something that was developed in 2021, what we call the National Agriculture Innovation Policy statement, which sets out the broad parameters for agriculture and innovation in Australia and set 4 high-level priorities, which are to guide the work of researchers across agriculture, fish and forestry. It sets a vision to be a strong, vibrant, collaborative agricultural sector where our producers are empowered to adopt the latest science, technology and tools. You've got those 4 in front of them, but effectively to be a trusted exporter of premium food and agricultural products, championing climate resilience, being a world leader in preventing and rapidly responding to biosecurity systems and what we call future-proofing. It's a term we like to use. And also being a mature adopter, developer and exporter of digital technology. Next slide. In terms of that strategy, it set out who the players were. Now, I mentioned research and development corporations, and today we actually have 4 of the. There we have a list of 10 participants. Four of them are presenting today. I'm representing government. We have someone from Research Development Corporations. We have someone from Cooperative Research Centre, and we have the universities represented as well. But you'll see that there's a lot of other players who are involved, who fund and who undertake research and development. And this is one of the reasons we wanted to have this presentation, so that there's a bit of a picture that there are a number of places and a lot of partners that potentially the region could be partnering with. Next slide. This next one is, I won't touch on this too much because I know Harriet has a much better slide on this, but it's Rural Research and Development Corporations. They're probably some of our best known structures in terms of rural research. They're a bit unique in the sense that they are funded jointly by government and industry. Government collects levies on behalf of industry. It then matches that funding dollar for dollar. There is a cap on that, but it's a dollar for dollar. Generally, it's 50-50 split. And there is an agreement between the government and industry. The priorities are set by industry. There is an overall policy framework of these are the broad things we want research and development corporations to be looking at, like climate resilience, exports and biosecurity. But ultimately, what gets invested in and funded is very much driven by farmers and industry. And it really is farmers, because the money's collected from each of them. I might go to the next slide. But that's not the only research funding and research players we have. The ABARES, Australian Bureau of Agricultural Resource Economics, publishes a report. You can find all of this information on our internet webpage. You can also see how they've collected the statistics, how they define it. But it gives you a picture of the $2.98 billion spent on research and development in the agriculture sector in the last 12 months. You'll see that it's a combination of private, Australian government, state and territory government, university, cooperative research centres. This also then splits into performers, which is who actually undertakes the work. So whilst the government, you'll see the federal government funds a lot, but they don't perform a lot. Similarly, you'll see the state and territory governments perform more than they actually fund. So you'll see the university and the private sector and the research and development corporations are huge performers of the science. I might go to the next slide. And this is from the same report, basically outlining research and development funding since 2005, the annual growth rate of 2.8% and expenditure growing at 2.7% at that period. You'll notice there is sometimes a gap. Maybe in the next slide you'll probably see it a bit clearly. Next slide, thanks. Which you'll see some irregularities that I think in the funding and public funding. Sometimes that comes from, well, actually, this is not the slide I thought it was. This slide basically effectively shows that the growth of private funding over that period is 4.8% compared to 1.45%, which really highlights that we're seeing private investment now in agricultural research and development overtaking federal funding, and indeed in 23-24 was the first time it overtook government funding. So next slide. And this is, I think, another example of the rate of funding, which again highlights that a lot of the growth is coming from the private sector and universities, and that, in fact, relatively, the Australian government and the states have seen a decline in some of the funding and expenditure in research and development. But we are seeing what you'd want to see, more private investment going into the sector. So that's also a positive message. Next slide. And that I think is really just the overview. I didn't want to take much more time, but hopefully it gives you a picture of basically the funding sources, the fact that there are a lot of players, and we'll be talking to some of those players. And in terms of trying to link in and working out how we can actually collaborate more and who organisations and how organisations talk to Australia. Hopefully the next set of presentations will help. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nectarius, for giving that overview. I'm now pleased to introduce our panel for this evening and our keynote speakers. So Harriet Mellish is the General Manager of Global Innovation Networks at AgriFuture. We have Dr. Mick Schaefer, Deputy CEO for the Cooperative Research Centre on Food Agility, and Mr. Alec Webb, the CEO of the Regional University Network in Australia. Each will give a 15-minute presentation, and then we'll follow that by a panel discussion. So please, while they're talking, feel free to put your questions in the chat so we can see them as we go along and you don't forget them by the time we get to the end of our panel. I'd now like to hand over to Harriet. Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Not a problem. Let me just share my screen, and happy National Agriculture Day, everyone. It doesn't want me, unfortunately, since
Laura,
we've joined.
Can you help out? Do you have a copy of the presentation?
Yep, I'll share it.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura. Well, while we're getting that set up, I just wanted to introduce myself. So I'm Harriet Mellish. I'm as Cassia said, the General Manager for Global Innovation Networks at AgriFutures Australia. So we're one of the 15 RDCs that Nectarius touched on. So rural development corporations are really focused on investing in research, development and extension for the needs of Australian agriculture. And as we saw on Nectarius' slide, that covers, most of them are commodity focused. So if I think about some that you may be aware of in South and Latin America, that would be the likes of Meat and Livestock Australia, which focuses on red meat in terms of beef and lamb and goat. Also, we have the likes of Grains Research and Development Corporation too. So if we jump to the second slide, that would be excellent. So I'll tell you a little bit about AgriFutures Australia. So AgriFutures Australia is not a commodity-focused research and development corporation. We're actually what we might call a little bit of a catch-all RDC, where we represent a array of different commodities and industries. So we represent 13 industries, ranging from chicken, some of our largest being chicken meat, rice, through to deer, buffalo, thoroughbred horses, and typically Australian kangaroos. But we're also really fortunate that we have a cross-sectoral mandate from the Australian government to invest in programs, research and development for areas that impact the whole of agriculture. So that is supporting emerging and high potential rural industries. So some of our key ones at the moment, another stereotypical Australian one would be crocodile through to sesame, for example, hazelnuts. But we also work to increase capacity and leadership within Australian agriculture, and also ensuring that we've got workforce and the skills that we need heading to the future. We also conduct horizon scanning and work that covers all those emerging national rural issues and opportunities, whether it be areas to do with climate, and then other linking in again with workforce and farm safety, for example. And then my area, which is everything to do with agri-food, tech and innovation. And really our focus here is around ensuring that Australia is a leader in accessing and adopting technology. So that involves both inbound technology, research, science, innovation, but also supporting the scaling of research and innovation within Australia. So if I jump to the next slide, please, Laura. So as I touched on here, these are our 5 focus areas, and I'll jump to the next slide actually, because I've covered this already, but our strategic plan, we're halfway through, and that's where our focus areas came from. So the research ecosystem here in Australia, we're really proud of our agricultural innovation here. It is something that, in terms of our producers, is thriving. We have a number of field days across the nation, and you will see a startup alley in most of them now, which is exceptional. Really focus on that B2C area, which is really great. We've always had strong kind of business to business, but now we're really seeing innovation really land with our producers. Our producers have been largely unsubsidized, so that really drives their interest and desire to grasp innovation and the newest technology to ensure that they are driving a healthy P&L. We're really proud of, obviously, the research infrastructure that we have available within Australia. I won't touch too much on that. And then obviously as well, we're really fortunate to have a robust and strong government support supporting R&D. If we jump to the next slide, please. So the research ecosystem here it's extensive. As you know, we're a federal system, but across each state, and I'm sure Alec will touch on these points, we really do have a vast array of expertise across the nation. Touching from one area we haven't touched on at the moment, ecosystem enablers. So a number of accelerators across the country, in addition to research and education, CRCs. We also have bridging institutions that sit within each of the states too, to ensure that we are bringing that innovation to life. If I just jump to the next one. And then if we dig down into the agri-tech ecosystem, again, we're really proud of the fact that each state has what we would consider a landing pad for innovation, as well as meetups for both domestic and international startups. We also have the government. Each state as well is really focused on both inbound and driving innovation within their remit, and also as well we have a large number of startups coming across the nation, which is really great there. Obviously, the RDCs that we touched on have a national coverage, and a number are based, have offices across the country. So if I jump to next slide, and I'll start getting into the GrowAg platform. So one of the areas that AgriFutures focuses on, and one of our key programs within our global innovation networks, is the GrowAg platform. So that's www.growag.com, and I'll share some links later on. And really, GrowAg was designed, it was actually during COVID, to really highlight all of the fantastic research and innovation that is coming through our RDC system within Australia. So it was there to bring together and create transparency, but also opportunity for connection both within Australia and internationally with all of that research that's taking place. So with that, we have over 3,000 research projects listed from across the RDCs and other institutions too on the platform, which enables visibility of what is happening, opportunities for cooperation, and we behind that have a concierge team, which I'll touch on in a moment. We also have commercialization opportunities. So on the website at a time, we have typically over 100 live opportunities, and these opportunities extend from acceleration opportunities or programs such as, as I said, acceleration, and also the opportunity to go through some specific startup programs, whether that be early stage or more advanced. We also have our commercialization opportunities, commercialization of IP and research, and that's typically those looking for partners, but also early stage investment. We also have commercialization opportunities, which focuses on startup raises. So to date, we've had over 100 million US raises on the platform that GrowAg have helped facilitate and showcase, which really goes to show how, the opportunity that is there, both from investment domestically and internationally. And then also we have organization profiles. So whether whether you just want to highlight who you are or find potential partners, we have the facility to share organisational profiles. And at the moment, over 20% of our profiles are international. To the platform, we have over 9,000 users a month, which is great. Again, over half of those are international. So within the website, you have the ability to set up a user portal, personalize your preference, and ensure that you're getting a weekly feed in terms of relevant opportunities, projects as well. But it's not just a digital platform. As I touched on earlier, we have a concierge service where there is a team, so there's a human element where their role is really focused on creating the connections. So if you are interested, there's the facility and the ability to reach out to our team, and they will then start working with you on creating those connections that you're after. And perhaps that's even building out an opportunity which says, I'm looking for this. Is there anyone out there who might be interested to partner in this specific area? Examples of that from an international perspective would be the likes of Wageningen University and Research, who engaged with us and wanted to share some projects that they had and partners within that. If we jump to the next slide. So there's a QR code there if you want to scan it, but I'll also put the link in the chat and we'll hopefully share this pack afterwards. But really we focus on the APAC, but really bringing that international element coming through. So we've launched in New Zealand, formally launched in New Zealand and the UK, but as I said, really working to create our global network. But in terms of inbound APAC, we are connected with the whole ecosystem, both within Australia, but then also, for example, in New Zealand with the Crown Research Institutes and the university network there. So as I said, our unique concierge service is free to use. So we are backed by our funds, but that come from the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, but then also our appropriation that comes from that. But as I said, free to use, and really our focus is on driving those connections that flow through to early stage discussion and then negotiation milestones. Might jump to the next slide, please. So this is another example that I wanted to share. We've engaged with Kansas State over the last couple of years to support them in commercialization of IP. So that's one of the opportunities that is on the website at the moment. So we've got licensing available there. So really for us, we see commonalities across the globe. We know that agriculture ag tech in particular is a slow iteration cycle if you're focused in just one country only. So we know that global partnerships is a way to accelerate that. And I'll jump to the next slide, please. And a slightly different example here is that we have Deep Planet, who were a UK business that were looking to bring their technology into Australia. And this was specifically for viticulture. So Deep Planet really knew that there was a fantastic opportunity within viticulture in Australia, but they didn't know who to reach out to. And that's why they engaged the GrowAg team. So that helped them understand who the players were, who the right people were to speak to, and actually who were the right networks to start trialing some of that technology. And that's where we provided connections into the RDC, but also one of the state agricultural departments of the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries. And actually from that resulted in a licensing agreement, which is fantastic. Now I'll jump to the next slide. So in terms of how you can also immerse yourself in the world of Australian agri-food tech and innovation, another key program that we run is the EvokeAg event. So EvokeAg is a 2-day event. We're heading into our 5th event this year. We had our first one back in 2019, but had a hiatus over COVID. But we have sold out every year. we're looking forward to welcoming 2,000 delegates to Brisbane in Queensland on the 18th and 19th of February next year. What's really interesting now is that we've now become the second largest agri-tech food and innovation event globally. And for us, it's really about showcasing innovation and bringing together everyone within the ecosystem. As you can see, in terms of the types of delegates we get, our role is about bringing everyone together. So typically 15% of our delegates would be international. We typically see about 5% investors, and then really strong focus on agribusiness and corporates. So partners that we've got, our platinum partner is the group Elders, which are a key agribusiness company here in Australia, both a provider of chemicals, for example, but then also ag-tech itself and all the tools and equipment that you need, as well as their network of agronomists and stock agents. And also key part of that are also universities and universities. We have a startup alley, of which this year we're running an international immersion program too, of which 50% of our applicants were international. I think I've hit my time. So I am going to pass to the next slide, which is just my contact details, but I can pop those. I can pop the connect email for Greg in the chat. So thanks, everyone. And again, happy National Agriculture Day.
Thanks so much, Harriet, for your presentation. Before we move on to our next speaker, I would like to remind everyone that you can start to put any questions you have in the chat so you don't forget them by the time we get to the end of the panel. I'd now like to pass over to Dr. Mick Schaefer. Thanks, Mick.
Thanks, Cassia, and thanks, Harriet. That was very interesting. I'm glad you've got some of those innovation slides on there with all the different networks. It's great to see that there's so much happening around all the different states. So hopefully I can share my screen. Just give me a moment.
That's great. I can see it.
You've got that? Perfect. Okay, so I'm Dr. Mick Schaefer. I'm the CEO of Food Agility CRC, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you today about, I guess, what Food Agility CRC has been providing to the agricultural sector within Australia over the last since 2017. So, what I can't do though. Oh, there we go. So, firstly, I guess I'll just introduce what Food Agility CRC actually is. It's a cooperative research centre that is funded by the Australian government, and it's delivering research and innovation services across the agri-food industry in Australia. We started up in 2017, and we were set up to specialise in data-driven technology and data analytics, essentially to help increase profits and sustainability across that agri-food sector. Since 2017, we've set about trying to broker and design different projects that really range in size and scope, from small discrete projects, sort of agile research projects, right through to major multi-million-dollar initiatives that have both national and global significance throughout that ecosystem. And our team and network has expanded to now over 100 different project partners, and they span not only the agri-food industry, but also technology, big global tech partners, research, as well as government sectors as well. So it's quite a broad range of partners, and there's a bit of a flavour of those in a few slides later on. But what that means is, I guess, from our perspective, is that we've built this really broad expertise set within the CRC, and it's if you think about agriculture, it's not just looking at yield or water use efficiency or any things like that. It's all different areas of agricultural innovation and things like that we don't really think about: data sharing, cybersecurity, right through to regulatory responses, climate adaptation, carbon measurement. There's a huge range of things that these projects and initiatives all cover. And so it just highlights, I guess, the amount of work that can be done in this space. And it's not just your typical or sort of agricultural research that you might associate it with. But I guess one of the big things that I wanted to step back for is why would you need a Food Agility CRC and we take a look back to 2017 when we, I guess, started, and our why we started. And the reason being is the fact that there was a McKinsey global study back in 2015 that looked at the digitization of many different industries within around the world. And of course, you can see right down at the bottom of that slide, you've got agriculture and hunting being last in terms of digitization. And so the world was digital, but agriculture certainly was not. So there was a need for innovation in agriculture, and particularly in the digital and data side of things. And we know that the world has been progressing at an incredible rate, and you will see the ag tech adoption around the world increasing and, progressing incredibly quickly, but sort of agriculture was behind that. So there was a need to do targeted research on ag innovation, and particularly from a data and digital perspective. And of course, from an OECD perspective as well, we've got Australia was 17th within the OECD for inventiveness. So we're really good at actually doing novel things within research, but we're 76th out of those 100 countries within the OECD in terms of translating that research into commercial outputs. And so close to last from that level. And we're actually last in terms of collaborating within that OECD. So there was a fair bit of work to be done. And as Harriet said, now the state of play within Australia is actually really quite good. The innovation within the agricultural sector is very strong, and there is collaborations happening throughout Australia, but also throughout the world as well. So I can say that since 2017, we've certainly improved a lot. And so Australia is a great place to innovate. And we've got a rapidly expanding ag tech sector that is led by bodies like the Australian Ag Tech Association. And I think there's over 300 members to ag tech companies of that Australian Ag Tech Association at the moment. And we pay very close attention to issues like data, the road to hands-free farming, cybersecurity, and critical infrastructure like telecommunications. And of course, in a country the size of Australia, telecommunications and infrastructure like that is incredibly important, because you need that connectivity to be able to run and to be able to collect data off all the sensors or ag tech that you might be using on your farm. And of course, we've also got large-scale national pilots within Australia as well. We've got traceability pilots, data ecosystems like the Australian Agricultural Data Exchange, and then there's state and federal government ag tech adoption initiatives like the Commonwealth On-Farm Connectivity Program, the Farms of the Future program in New South Wales, and others like the Ag Tech Growth Fund run by PIRSA. So I guess the state of it is that there's a lot of different work going across different states and nationally as well, and it is progressing really well. We also have quite a vibrant research innovation ecosystem. Harriet touched on the rural R&D corporations, so I'm going to sort of focus on the cooperative research centres. So cooperative research centres are funded out of the Department of Industry, Science and Resources, an Australian government department. And the program is actually, the CRC program has been running for 30 years within Australia, and there's been around 239 different cooperative research centres that have focused on many different topics, not just agriculture, of course. And the investment over those 30 years has been around $1.1 billion of Australian investment going into those programs. And they generally run 6 to 10 years. And at the moment, there is 7 agri-food specific CRCs, and food agility is just one of those. And so as part of that, as you'll know, we've got, and the ambassador spoke earlier on about that we're currently sitting at $86 billion for our Australian agriculture sector. There's a target set by the Australian government to reach $100 billion by 2030. And so to get to that, there's obviously themes of action that needs to be focused on to get to a sector of the size of $100 billion. And those 7 sectors are on the right-hand side, and things like biosecurity, supply chains, innovation and research are key as parts of those. And of course, for all of those to happen, you need data as part of data to essentially be the lifeblood of all of those themes to ensure that we're able to reach that $100 billion target. And so hence that was the reason for food agility. So food agility was set up as this CRC funded by the government. It was a $150 million co-investment from partner and Commonwealth funds. And as I said, it's there to unlock the power of data and digital in research to create a sustainable agri-food future, where we I guess Food Agility's secret sauce, I suppose you could call it, is we actually broker that industry university / government partnership. And we sit in the middle of being able to bring industry to the table, and specifically bringing industry in to talk to university researchers around what potential problems they're having within their own companies or within the sector, and what research could be done. And then we look at building projects that are specifically focused on that industry need. And the way that our CRC works, and it's very common to most CRCs, is we have strategic partners, and these are key either universities or industry partners who co-invest within the Cooperative Research Centre on a yearly basis. And they put money in, and obviously that money is used to then co-invest in research programs. And so we've got Food Agility CRC has 9 strategic partners. And as you can see, there's a mixture of universities, government departments, but also companies as well. We've got Yamaha Agriculture in there, as well as IAG. And these are groups that can see the value of innovation in agriculture and have core research themes in that space. And they want to co-invest with government, industry, as well as research to deliver key strategic initiatives. And so we work about trying to make sure that we can find projects that really do leverage off the co-investment and get the best outcomes for all of the parties. And I guess the thing that's different about Food Agility CRC is that we really do put industry in the driver's seat with how those projects are designed. A lot of the time, and many of you will appreciate this, is the fact that research is often driven from a university or researchers themselves. They come up with a really nice research idea and then go and pitch that to an industry to say, well, look, here's the research we're doing. Could that help you? We've taken a very different approach, and a lot of the time it's actually industry partners or industry groups that come to us as the CRC and say, look, we've got this problem. Do you have any researchers that could potentially help us? And so then our role as the Food Agility is to go and find the correct researchers within organisations and our partner universities that would be able to sit down with that industry partner, really, I guess, take apart the problem that's been presented and then turn it into a research project that can be completed. And so what it means is you've got a really nice cohesiveness between both the research and the industry partner from the get-go, right from the start of the project, to make sure that whatever is delivered through the project is really meeting that industry need. And so and our role from Food Agility is we're obviously a part of designing and brokering that relationship, but then we monitor it all the way through the project lifecycle as well, and don't just leave it until the end to see what the outcomes look like. And so what that means is that we have this sort of agile project management style, where we obviously sit down with the industry and research from the start. And then on a quarterly basis, as the project is being run, we then check back in with the team, and we run these things called showcases. And it's an opportunity for the full project team and our Food Agility team to get together. We obviously have a look at what's been delivered within that last quarter of the project. And it gives the industry partners an opportunity to check in with the research team if they haven't been overly involved in the last 3 months, make sure that the research outputs that they're obviously very highly invested in are still meeting their need, and they haven't sort of diverged off track. And it also allows us, because we're checking in so frequently over a 3-month period, it means that if there are any changes that need to be made for the project, and if there's a bit of a divergence, or if they need to change the timelines or the funding or whatever it is, it means that we can make those changes quite quickly rather than waiting a longer period of time. And so that allows the innovation and I guess the outputs of the project to be come to the table much quicker. And so it also means from an intellectual property perspective, we work on the model that the industry partner, as the commercialization partner, is the one who will own most of the IP from a project, and often obviously the university has access to the IP for publications and other future research, but we know that it's the commercial partner who's likely to take that further into industry. And so this again is a sort of a control mechanism that allows that industry partner within those showcases to make sure that what they're investing in is still going to be needed for them, and they can further develop it into products in the future for their own offering. So what that means is, throughout our portfolio since 2017, we've had a huge number of projects. So since we've had over 60 different research initiatives, and as I said earlier, they're ranging from small projects of the order of $100,000 to $200,000, right through to multi-million-dollar projects. And we've also assessed what their economic impact would be over 10 years, and roughly we're sitting at over 6 billion Australian dollars, which is hopefully contributing to that $100 billion target. And it's also a project portfolio of cash as well as in-kind investment of over $400 million that we've set up in that last 7 years. So the CRC is, I guess, it's invested in a lot of different projects and a lot of different areas of projects as well. It's not just one particular area. It does cover literally the full breadth of agriculture, from aquaculture through to livestock, through to horticulture, but the key common element to all of those is the data and digital side of things. So we also have international collaborations. One of the things that CRCs, so that's cooperative research centres, are specifically designed with the intent to deliver benefits back to the Australian economy. So by that particular line, you would think that CRCs can only work on projects that are delivered with Australian-based partners, but that's actually not the case. What we've found is that if the project has benefits that can be translated back to Australia, then it doesn't matter where the partners are actually based. And we've got quite a few projects with international partners, and some are listed there below. We've got Sespri and NTT, Yamaha, and these companies are based overseas, and they've often got researchers and project staff members who are based overseas. They would be doing the work there and then translating it obviously back to an Australian context, but they've also got eyes on the project outputs as to how they can benefit their companies within their own countries as well. And an example would be the Bosch example, for instance. That's a particular cybersecurity project that we're working on, that's looking how to make sure that the data that's collected on IoT sensors in agriculture is secure and can't be hacked into. But they've obviously got that there's a clear agricultural application for that, but they're also looking at that same technology and translating it through to their automotive and manufacturing capability as well within Bosch, which is obviously a global reach. So it's really around just the translation and how the ideas can be translated across different jurisdictions, I suppose. And through this, we're also growing a network of innovation global smart farms. And one of the things that we set up now 3 years ago with Charles Sturt University is called the Global Digital Farm Demonstration Site. And this was a strategic collaboration between Food Agility and Charles Sturt around setting up a farm where technology companies could come and demonstrate their technology. They could test out new innovations that they've been working on and actually test it on a real world farm scenario, because the farm site at Charles Sturt University is over 2,000 hectares. So it's quite a good size to be able to test out a lot of different applications. And what this also provides is a test bed of sorts for universities to come and test their technology as well. Often with university research, it might be a lab-based technology or sensor that's been developed in a lab, and those researchers don't often get the opportunity to test it on a real-world working farm. And so we set up the Global Digital Farm as a demonstration site, and a site that these technologies could be come and tested on. And what we've found is that obviously there's a lot of smart farms around, particularly around Australia, that are starting to work in this space. And so it made sense to bring them together as part of a network. And so it started off with the actually the first one was the UNE Smart Farm, and then we had the Charles Sturt University Global Digital Farm. We've got Long Run On College. And just this year in 2024, we did set up the Global Smart Farms Network with Charles Sturt University as they're the secretary of that network. And there's over 20 farms across Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the UK. And it was set up around Commonwealth countries, but they're expanding that at the moment. And what all those global smart farms have in common is they're doing essentially demonstration of technology. Lots of them are running the same sorts of IoT sensors and farming practices. And this network provides an opportunity to be able to collaborate across different countries and test out the same technology, run research projects as a collaboration, and even look at changing and exchanging ideas and curriculums around what they teach within their university systems, or are being offered as programs for their students as well. So it provides a really good collaborative and networking tool as part of that Smart Farm network. And the final thing that I wanted to talk about was another thing we've developed within Food Agility, and this is more enabling farmers and producers, is AgTech Finder. And it's essentially what I like to sort of describe it as is like the Google for ag tech companies within Australia. And currently we've got over 270 vendors on there, and it provides a place for ag tech companies to essentially put up their solutions and their product offerings, and it provides a place for farmers and producers to go and search for technology that they may not be able to find as easily through something like Google or a normal search engine. And you can specifically write in there what type of producer or farmer you are and what you're looking for, and it will bring up categories of the different technology that is available. It's not a shop front. It's not there to essentially sell the products. It's there just to provide our networks with a place to go to look up opportunities and technology that can be used and can be adopted on farm. And it's sort of akin, I suppose, to what Harriet talked about with GrowAg, where it's a free to use platform that you can go on there and just look up the solutions and technology that is available. And we do have an explainer video on YouTube that you can search through AgTech Finder, as well as we do have a podcast, the AgTech Finder podcast, which you can find through Spotify as well. And that often highlights a lot of those technologies that are produced, that are listed on AgTech Finder, and also the case studies around who they're working with and how their technology actually works and operates on real farms. So I think that is the end. It is the end of my slides. So look, thanks for the opportunity, and I'm be happy to take some questions later on in the panel session. If I can stop sharing.
Thanks so much, Mick. It's been great to hear from both you and Harriet about different models for engaging with Australia. And I think we're just about to hear about our third main model from, not our main model, but a third model from Alec Webb, who is from our regional university network. Alec.
Thank you, Cassie. I'm very much proud to be described as the third model. I think that's incredibly flattering. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from wherever you are. As Cassie said, my name's Alec Webb. I'm the CEO of the Regional Universities Network. The Regional Universities Network is the peak body for 7 regional universities, all based outside of Australia's largest metropolitan cities. Our universities have campuses across Australia that create regional strength, national success, and global impact. Based in Canberra, my job as the CEO is to advocate for regional universities and the issues that matter to my members. However, that's only part of my role. The other part is to raise the profile of regional universities and to identify opportunities for collaboration across the membership. Collaboration not just between the universities in our network, but also collaboration with industry, government, and international partners. RUN very much plants the seeds for research collaborations to grow. I'm pleased to say that RUN spends considerable effort building and cultivating relationships with partners across Latin America, particularly agricultural-focused research partnerships. We have so much that we can learn and gain from each other through these partnerships, and I'll touch briefly on some examples of successful ongoing collaborations between RUN universities, their South American partners, and agriculture. As you might expect from a network of regionally headquartered Australian universities, our universities have developed strong reputations for the quality and impact of our research outputs in agricultural-related fields of study. The footprints of RUN's network of universities' campuses overlaps with some of the richest and most diverse zones of Australia's agricultural outputs, and this allows for us to engage with industry and develop strong and highly specialised research capabilities. And that's not just me standing on my soapbox here this morning telling you about this. This is also backed up through statistics and metrics. The Australian government, via the Australian Research Council, periodically ranks the research strengths and capabilities of Australia's universities using a rating scale between 1 and 5 for each field of study, with 5 being well above world standard, 4 above world standard, 3 at world standard, and so on. RUN universities perform exceptionally well in the fields of research linked to agriculture with rankings of 4 or 5. For instance, the majority of RUN universities have particular strengths in agriculture and veterinary sciences, with the majority of research being conducted well above world standard, an outstanding achievement for university of our ages and resources. And as you can see from this table, the strengths are spread fairly equally across the membership. These research rankings reflect the high-level capabilities and impact of agricultural research undertaken by RUN universities. I do think, however, it's important to have a quick look at some of the actual research projects sitting behind these rankings. And I'm going to do my very best not to duplicate what Mick has already talked about, although I will say that food agility will get a pretty big shout out here. Mick talked very kindly about the Global Digital Farm. One of the examples is the one that exists at Charles Sturt University. So this is a partnership between Charles Sturt University and the Food Agility Cooperative Research Centre. It's a $22 million landscape laboratory that works on a 16,000 hectare commercial operating farm located at the Wagga Wagga campus in New South Wales. The Global Digital Farm is helping Australian farmers utilise the power of data, digital technology, and world-leading research to face a fast-moving and sustainable farming future. Here, technology is used to enhance the operations of the commercial farm and to help the farm manager make business-critical decisions. The Global Digital Farm is a physical and virtual hub for exploring big ideas in farming and testing and demonstrating agtech innovations under controlled and real-world operating conditions. The Global Digital Farm is increasing research collaboration, broadening and executing digitally enabled farming capabilities in broadacre, viticulture, and inland aquaculture. And as you can see from this slide, these are some of the amazing bits of technology that exist on this farm. Southern Cross University, also in partnership with AgriFutures Australia, have a strong history of collaborating across multiple projects to advance Australia's homegrown coffee bean industry. Australia's love affair with coffee beans is a $1 billion a year industry, yet the majority of Australia's coffee beans have historically been imported. This is starting to change with domestic production capacity and value raising, assisted by outputs of this research collaboration, with studies that look at important market issues, including research that's being part of a world coffee breeding program to identify new dwarf commercial cultivars that are adapted to the Australian coffee growing climates, and the development of a world-first coffee character sensory wheel, a colour-coded visual glossary of terms to describe coffee, organised by acidity, aftertaste, and mouthfeel. It establishes a common language between coffee drinkers and producers, and I can honestly say the colour wheel is one of my favourite ever things as a coffee aficionado. CQ University Australia has developed a new handheld sensor hardware capable of assessing the ripeness of mango crops prior to harvest and retail. The new technology utilises non-invasive sensor technology, which leaves the fruit undamaged, and it can assess fruit ripeness far more accurately than existing indirect maturity estimation techniques. In some cases, farm performance has increased by more than 40% through early and accurate assessment of the ripeness of fruit, bolstering crop productivity through optimized harvest timing and improved fruit quality. The CQU research team are now investigating the use of machine vision for assessing mango flowering and fruiting, and robotic harvesting techniques to overcome labor shortages and occupational risks to workers. They're currently trialing prototypes of the world's first robotic mango auto harvester, which is part of an integrated system which will ensure farmers know exactly how many fruits are on their trees, when they'll be in the perfect condition, and when to engage seasonal picking and packing workforces. And perhaps because it's so early here in the morning in Australia and I've just got coffee on my brain, I couldn't get past another example of collaboration undertaken this time at the University of Southern Queensland, which is researching the climate impacts of the world's premier growing regions for coffee and has been actively collaborating with researchers in Brazil and Colombia. And perhaps most importantly, for all that enjoy a good coffee in the morning, this research has expanded beyond just the climate impacts, but what are the solutions? Not only is this a valuable export for these countries and communities, but for many of us, it's the way we start our day. So they're just some very high-level examples. If Cassia gave me 2 hours, I would still be talking about some of the great examples that occur at regional universities in the agricultural space. But it's important to go beyond just knowing what we do, to think about how do we go about collaborating together. So collaboration with Australian universities can be extremely fruitful when it's done correctly. However, there are important considerations to ensure that collaborative researches are effective and long-term. Sure, we can all try to pick a winner at the start, but that is like looking for a needle in a haystack. And one doesn't simply pick a crop a day after planting the seed. These things take time. And a key element in international collaboration is understanding how each partner works and understanding what are the opportunities. First, in Australia, as both Mick and Harriet have touched on, there is no one nationally funded international collaboration scheme or body to help facilitate those collaborations. However, there are bodies that do exist within certain sectors. The cooperative research centres, which Mick has talked about, are a great example. But the key thing to remember is there are no shortcuts to collaborative research. You've got to make that happen, and you have to make that happen yourself. The other important thing here is to not focus on funding. Sure, funding is important, but immediate funding isn't necessarily the key ingredient to collaborative success in Australia. Australian Research Council grants, for instance, have a higher fail rate and have very long lead times. These cannot be put together in a week. These grants do not come quickly or easily. They take perseverance, they take resilience. One can never count their chickens before they hatch, so it's important to also focus on small victories. It is not just enough to identify expertise and begin a conversation, although that is the important first step, beginning the conversation. Like everywhere, researchers in Australia are busy. They're under a lot of work pressure and stress. And to gain traction from a research collaboration, there needs to be genuine, mutually beneficial benefits, not only for the researchers, but also for their institutions. And quite often, a whole of institution approach to collaboration will gain much more traction than just a researcher-to-researcher approach. So my advice is to be open to opportunities, be open to staff and or student mobility schemes, be open to sandwich PhDs and co-detels. If a successful collaboration is to be established, it will require trust, time, familiarity, and perseverance. Crops, like research collaborations, take time to grow. They need to be nurtured, fed, watered, and when the time is ripe, that is when you harvest the result of your hard work. So as you've seen, the Regional Universities Network has many members undertaking a diverse range of collaborative, high-quality agricultural research. And our members frequently collaborate with each other, with industry, with government, and with international partners in regions like Latin America. And so if you see an opportunity to collaborate with a young university, it might be difficult to know where to start or who to speak to first. And thankfully, well, hopefully, thankfully, that's where I exist. It is literally my job as the CEO of the Regional Universities Network to build relationships with potential partners in South America and the rest of the world. It's my job to help facilitate those opportunities for matchmaking activities to occur. So your first step in this could literally be as simple as dropping me an email to start that conversation. I'm more than delighted to explore the opportunities with each and every one of you to put you in touch with our experts across the university network. This webinar is titled Sowing the Seeds for Effective Agricultural Research Collaboration with Australia. And in that spirit, I look forward to answering any questions you may have. And as I said, research partnerships are like growing a crop. You reap what you sow. And while being here today is not exactly sowing a field, it is the vital first step of a journey of research collaboration. And I personally look forward to observing your journey and your bountiful harvest. Cassia.
Thank you so much, Alec, for your presentation. We now have some time for questions from our panelists. I've got a couple in so far, so we might start with one from Dr. Antonio Castillo around wanting to know more around the specific models of partnership and funding mechanisms that are available to attract international collaborators. Does anyone want to volunteer to go first? Mick?
I can have a go at that.
Great,
So thanks, Dr. Antonio, for your question. I guess so. If I take the CRC example, so the CRC is not really a funder per se. It's a co-investor in projects. So the way that we work with co-investing with international mechanism is making sure that we're working with the university or the company that is overseas, and then leveraging that against co-invested funds from obviously from the Commonwealth, but also from a research side of things. So it's a three-way co-investment at minimum, and that way we are making sure that you're getting a really good value for money from obviously from a research side of things and an industry side of things, as well as the government side as well. And the way that means is that it also means that each of the partners is literally invested in the project itself. They're not just taking money and taking the IP for it. And so you've got to essentially almost pay to play. And so the way that it has worked quite well, but it is quite tricky as well from a return on investment perspective. And universities often wish to get quite a large return on their investment of any money that does go into a research project. And so by having that three-way co-investment, it means that you're probably limiting the return on investment to around 2.5 to 3 to 1 return on investment at maximum, unless there is a significantly large industry contribution on top of what that research funding is. So I guess that's how it works, and it's really around, just as Alex said, it's opening the conversation and starting the conversation around, well, what are you looking at, and how can that work, and then understanding what the mechanisms are, and really would be happy to talk. And I'm sure Harriet from from AgriFutures perspective would take a similar stance on that. It's around just talking and understanding how that collaboration can start, and then understanding what particular funding mechanisms might work best for you.
Great. Harriet, did you have anything to add?
No, I think Mick's covered most of the pieces, and maybe Alec can touch on some of these pieces. But to reiterate, I think there's the tech transfer offices within each of the university are a really key place to start, and you've also got the higher education research commercialization framework, which can really support with understanding that step-by-step information and advice on information and kind of standardized agreement templates. I think the other, and I know Nectarius has got his, I don't know if he's got his hand up, but I think the other piece as well is in terms of if you're scaling technology as well, it would be looking at each of the state organizations. So some offer some quite attractive incentives for setting up your organization within Australia and scaling there.
Thanks, Harriet. Nectarius, did you want to weigh in?
Look, I just wanted to mention on the collaboration and investment, two things. One, I think that the concierge service that Harriet mentioned is, you can turn that around to call that effectively a free service. It's a contribution in kind in terms of saving time and money into for an organisation. So I guess that in itself is an incentive. That in itself is something that costs money to do. So, and I know that Harriet mentioned that for VOCAG, for that program to attract innovation from overseas to come to Australia and potentially go to a lucrative market. So that I think is another opportunity and attractiveness. So I think we look at collaboration and research, not just as collaboration and research, but also that commercialization component of how we can all be contributing to a larger market. And I'm not sure whether from the education people, Cassia, you want to mention anything on any programs on the education side, because I think that's a different space entirely for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I might just briefly mention that we do have agreements, country-to-country agreements across Latin America. So in Brazil, where I am, we have an MOU between the Department of Education and the National Council for State Research Funding Agencies, and we regularly do matchmaking webinars, but that MOU essentially facilitates the funding flow on the Brazilian side for projects that are joint projects and have been funded by a major Australian research funding body. So there are different mechanisms like that we have in place with countries as well. Alec, did you want to add anything to this topic?
Sure. I mean, I think Mick has kind of covered a lot of what I would say. What I would also add, though, is that these things take time. So I have examples where researchers have known each other for 10 plus years before they've actually successfully collaborated on a project together. And that's about developing that understanding and trust of each other, understanding the different ways that people work. Now, they were collaborating on a whole range of other activities prior to that research funding landing at their various institutions. And so it is something that I don't think there's a straight journey of A to B. This is a journey that can take many different pathways. And it requires, I think, an openness and a willingness. It may not be the one thing that you absolutely wanted to work on together that you dreamed was going to be that project. However, the opportunity presents itself in other ways for you to collaborate together. And that just helps build that ground and traction to then take that opportunity of what it is you really wanted at the end date.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone. We've just got a question in from Mauricio Molina around whether does collaborative interaction at any scale consider attracting post-degree students from Latin America to get involved in R&D projects? So really, is there an opportunity for students and postgraduates to get involved?
There absolutely is. And in fact, that's often the starting point that we recommend and that has worked quite successfully for our universities, is starting with those postdocs, whether that's co-tutels, whether it's short-term mobility programs, as a way of demonstrating capability to each other, but also helping to strengthen and embed relationships, not just at one researcher to another researcher, but at multiple different levels with multiple different researchers. We've viewed that as a very successful model, and in fact, it's one of the ones that we often will open a conversation with.
I would agree with that as well. I think so. Part of the CRC program, and I didn't mention it in the talk, was that we have a HDR, so high degree research program with PhD and master's students, and a lot of our students have come from overseas, and they come to Australia to work specifically on a research project or within one of our funded projects, or just to do their PhD at an Australian university. So it could be as Alex said, it could be working specifically on a short-term project, or it could be coming here as a full-time PhD or a postdoc as well. So no, I agree. I think that's a really great starting point for that collaborative nature.
Great, fantastic. We've got a lot of questions in the chat or people reaching out regarding specific areas of interest that they're wanting to collaborate with Australia on. So I might start with you, Harriet, but what's the best way for someone, a researcher who's interested in a really specific area, to try and find a match in Australia?
Yep, so first point of call would be to go and have a look on the GrowAg platform and have a look, and you can put in your keywords, set up a user within our portal, and see if there are any existing research projects within the RDC system, and then some of our other partners too that would be of interest. If you find something, or if you don't and you want to, pursue that further, then it would be to either submit an inquiry via the GrowAg platform, or to email directly connect@growag.com, and I popped that in the chat before, and we can the concierge team can have a discussion about and create some introductions in terms of who potential partners could be, whether it be an RDC, a university, a CRC, for example.
Fantastic. Mick or Alec, anything to add?
No, I think what Harriet has mentioned there is a really useful starting point. But I'd also say use the power of your networks, right? That finding those opportunities and finding those people and finding those programs, you don't know what you don't know. And in some cases, the only way to know is to ask that question. And, that's what people like me are here for. This is what Harriet's email address is for. We may not know the answer, but we probably know the person who does know the answer to that. And at least on my behalf, I'm happy to volunteer my services and time to that extent. So feel free to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree, Alec. I think you use your networks, and we often have inquiries from overseas researchers around specific projects that we've done through our CRC or specific areas. And often it's not the case that Food Agility can help with that particular case, but we've got, as I mentioned, there's 7 other CRCs in the agri-food space that we've all got connections to, and we can make that introduction for you, and make sure that you're connected with the correct people within the Australian innovation ecosystem space. I think that's the key part. We've all got our networks here as well that we can hopefully connect with yours and make that sort of connection at least start somewhere.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you. There's a question for me, which I'll answer briefly, around how you can find information on MOUs. So I'm just going to pop a link in the chat, which is to the Department of Education's website, which has information on what we do in all of our partner countries. So I don't have any more questions in the chat, and I think we've covered off our main area. So if anyone else has got questions, please pop them in the chat. I guess the other thing that I thought was interesting based on the presentations was around the role of industry in collaboration, and maybe any advice on, how you can get that, not just the bilateral or trilateral or multilateral collaboration between universities, but if researchers are having industry collaborations in their own countries, how they can really bring that to the potential partnerships they want to look to.
I might jump in on this one. I think there's a couple of strands to this one. We're definitely seeing globally and within Australia a growth of what we would consider corporate venture capital, but also RDC venture capital, who are looking for solutions to a number of industry problems. So I was really fortunate to be in London recently with Grain Innovate, which is GRDC's venture capital. So one of the RDC, the Grains Research and Development Corporation, as well as Dairy Australia and Hort Innovation, so focused on horticulture, who are all out there scoping and trying to find, some innovative solutions that we haven't found within Australia, and that's really focused on early stage, which is really interesting. And the fact that they're looking globally is excellent. So that's a really interesting thread that we've got coming through. Another one is corporate innovation challenges. So there are a number of opportunities that we have within the platform. For example, we've had opportunities from Cargill, from Bayer, also another opportunity, for example, that's out in the market at the moment is the Zespri Innovation Fund that they've got, ZAG, which is which is again focused on finding solutions that future-proof their business. And just jumping back to that, and also on that corporate venture capital angle, we are partnering with corporates that are international, such as Crone Machinery, who have mapped their whole supply chain and are looking for specific solutions to again ensure that their business is future proof, but also has that unique selling point and a competitive advantage. And that's really fascinating. And quite a lot of these corporates are not taking equity either, which is a really interesting model. And I know Mick touched on a couple of examples too, so I'll allow him to build out on some explicit partnerships.
Yeah, and so building on that, I guess what we've found as well, particularly our sort of research innovation industry collaborations that we've seen, often it's what's worked really well with our projects is having the postdoc or the PhD researcher from a university actually physically embedded within the company and working on their industry problems. So you're within the industry environment working with the industry team, so those researchers get a really first-hand understanding of what the actual problem is and being able to work with the team, and that way they're able to get to a solution a lot faster. And what that's also meant for the relationship management as well, that industry research relationship is increased, it's much stronger, and then the industry partners then much more likely to come back for a second phase of research or a second phase of project as well, because they've actually built that really nice working relationship from the get-go. And so we found that is probably one of our preferred methods of making sure that research innovation project is actually running, I guess, healthy in a healthy manner, because you're building that from the start. And so I think that's something that works. And as Harriet said, there is a lot of corporate, I suppose, ventures and innovation capital out there at the moment within Australia, and it's just a matter of finding it and finding where those challenges are. It's probably in some respects it's quite a tough economic landscape at the moment for a lot of companies, but in that case you turn over another rock and there's innovation challenges and people who have set aside a significant amount of investment for innovation in agriculture, or they're within their products and they're willing to do research and projects. It's just a matter of finding them. So again, I think it's similar to what we spoke about earlier, is building on your networks and understanding what's out there and what's available.
Great. Fantastic. Alec, anything to add from you before I hand over to Nectarius?
Yeah, Mick really hit the nail on the head right there. Embedding a PhD student or a researcher in an industry partner makes such a fundamental difference. I can think of 3 to 4 examples immediately of where industry partners have taken that. They were very uncertain, I think, initially, and then said, actually, we'll take on a PhD student, we'll embed them here. And then what we saw was at the end of the time, they didn't want to let the PhD candidate go, and were then negotiating with the university about how can I cover, salary contributions to keep this person here that is using that unique skill set that researchers have to solve a whole range of problems that weren't necessarily what they thought the initial problem was. And it's a low-risk solution for both the institution but also for the industry partner, but it cements so much goodwill and there's so much activity that flows from those arrangements.
Great, thank you. Nectarius, did you want to add something?
Look, just sort of comment, having a look at some of the comments that we've seen. Some of the comments referred to individual areas of research and interest in very specifics, rather than, I guess, the broad how to collaborate. I think we're recording this so we can have a look at which may include the comments. We're making some notes on those comments. I think some of the people actually in the seminar today will be who we'll be getting in touch with if they're, for instance, I think there was a question there about bees and pollination in one of the sectors. So, but the other source, which I do want to mention, which then goes, I think, to the work of AgriFutures, is in addition to opportunities for research, also the research that's undertaken by the Research and Development Corporation. So if you're interested in saying, has anyone done any work on X, Y, Z, you can put that information and potentially see that and see the outcomes of that report. So it may not be direct collaboration, but you're able to say, right, well, some of that work has started somewhere else, and you can make those connections. I just wanted to mention that because I think some of the questions have been about very specific collaborations, and we'll want to follow those. But so yeah, but that reference to the platform, because if you're thinking you're doing work on grains and you want to, in particularly semi-arid environments, X, Y, Z, has someone looked at acid sulfate soils or particular types of contamination? And you may be able to find that's been done. So, and additionally, you may even be able to find which organisation and which researchers were doing it, which will then answer the second question if you want to get in touch.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Nectarius. And I think that's a really good sort of guiding principle to wrap up what we've been talking about tonight. I really want to thank all our panelists tonight again, Harriet, Mick and Alec. You've been fantastic, really informative, and thank everyone who's attended. Hopefully you've learnt a lot and you know where to go now to find out more about how to collaborate with Australia on research. We have recorded this webinar and we will send it round to everyone who registered, as well as the presentations. And so, yes, please be in touch if you have any other questions. I'll just pass over to Harriet, Mick and Alec to say any final points they want to before we wrap up. Harriet.
No, I just want to thank everyone for joining today. I know that there are several different time zones, whether it be afternoon, evening, or for us morning. It's been great to have the questions come through. So building on Nectarius's point, we've got the GrowAg platform, of which I've just put the links to organisations, opportunities and research projects, and reminder in terms of connect@growag.com. And then a final push, if anyone is keen to head to beautiful sunny Brisbane in February, we would love to welcome you to EvokeAg. We do offer reduced a discount on international delegates attending, and also we have a number of sideline events across the week. For Perth this year, we had 40 sideline events. So some are specific to internationals too, for example, an international pitch night for startups. And again, that also brings together all the RDCs, CRCs, and also universities. So key partners there, for example, as Alec touched on, Charles Sturt University, La Trobe, University of Queensland, University of New South Wales, to just name a couple. So yeah, please be in touch if you have any queries.
Thanks, Harriet. Mick.
Yeah, well, look, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for tuning in today and listening. I think hopefully you've learnt a little bit about how you can collaborate with Australia, and look, I'm more than happy to respond to any emails or reach out. I think my email address was on the slides, so you can send directly to me, or there is another one, which is hello@foodagility.com. And I can also do a bit of a plug for EvokeAg. I've been to EvokeAg a couple times now from Food Agility's perspective, and it is a great event. It's a great event, a great opportunity to network and to understand what's happening within Australia in innovation, but also internationally as well. So, if you are there in person, please seek us out, because I'm sure we'll probably be all there in person as well, and be great to meet you. So on that, thank you again. Thanks for the opportunity for talking this morning or this afternoon.
Thanks, Mick. Alec.
I too would give a shout out to EvokeAg. Great event. If you get a chance, make sure you go. We'll welcome you all from all over the world. I would like to just thank everyone from tuning in. This really is the first step that you've all taken here in finding out more. And, I look forward to hearing from some of you to help explore and navigate those pathways. I would, of course, also just give a shout out and a big thanks to Laura, Barbara, Andrea, and Cassia. These events don't just happen. Your tireless work that you do in country is so vitally important to fostering and supporting these kinds of collaborations. So thank you.
Thanks, Alec. So thank you all again for coming, and we look forward to continuing the collaboration with you.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody, good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks all for joining. Yeah. Thanks to the team for joining. And
Thanks, Nectarius. Laura, we can end the recording.